So why don't we just go ahead and start? I think people will kind of be coming in, and but we can go ahead and start. One of the things that I guess I just wanted to have this video chat because as the holidays come up, it's a time where we're seeing a lot of family members, kind of near and far, that maybe we don't always have the chance to spend a lot of time with them. And this could be a time where we have maybe a week, you're spending with relatives, and it could be a good time to talk about some really important topics. So I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to discuss how do we bring up those topics, what is it important to know, and so that's what we're going to be focusing on during this discussion. I'm Shannon McNulty, for those of you who don't know, founder of the Village Law Firm. I'm an estate planning attorney. I also have my LLM in taxation. And we have with us Sarah Stanich. Sarah is a financial advisor and the founder of Cultivating Wealth. She has an MBA from NYU, and her team of female financial planners manage over $100 million of assets. And so I thought Sarah would be a great person, and her clients love her, and she's so great with talking to clients about all of these important issues and breaking it down for them and making it easy to understand. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And great topic. It's so important. And like you say, it's an opportunity at this time of year to, kind of get this information that might be sort of back burner that you're wondering about your family. I think a lot of estate planning issues are more top of mind due to the whole, COVID crisis, global pandemic. I think that more and more people, are thinking about this stuff. And so, crossing that off your list would be a relief, I think, for many.
Yeah, definitely. It is something that's on top of mind, that we really want to make sure that our loved ones are protected and taken care of. And sometimes that means raising some sort of sensitive topics that it might not be so easy to talk to them about. So I want to start by, I have a poll that I'm going to launch here. And just if the attendees can indicate what they're most interested in. So we have 4 topics. We're interested in information about talking to older family members about estate planning, talking to older family members about financial planning, talking to younger family members about estate planning, and talking to younger family members about financial planning. So if you just want to answer that poll, that would be really helpful. So we want to make sure that we're tailoring our discussion to the people who are on the call and to be able to address their concerns. So if you just want to go ahead and pick one or more of those, that would be great.
I'm guessing it's the older talking about talking to your older relatives. What do you think?
No, actually, yeah, we kind of have a split. So some want to talk about to their younger family members about these issues, and some about their older family members. So actually, let's start with talking to younger family members. I think sometimes we just think, oh, younger people are more worried about their older parents, but I think that an older generation may be a little bit more experienced and wiser in these areas, and so they want to make sure that their children are protected, their adult children.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that, and I think that I've read an article. I mean, maybe that there's just more of an uptick in interest of millennials and younger, getting that stuff done, like getting their wills done, and working on their financial plan. I think that traditionally a time that happens is when you have kids. So when you say younger, like, does that mean someone who's like 30 and like is having kids, or someone who is, just graduating from college and has their first job. Like it's, there's a big territory in there, but it's important to know, like, okay, what would, do I have a beneficiary assigned? Like, what if something happens to me? Like, how will, will someone be able to take care of my financial affairs? All those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think where I see it a lot of times is once grandchildren come, that then the grandparents are concerned about making sure that the parents have some kind of plan in place if something happens to them, so that the grandkids would be taken care of. Other things that I see are sometimes older family members may be financially supporting younger family members. And if they sort of their adult children get married and they're providing financial assistance, they want to know that if something happened to the child, that that money isn't going to go to somebody else. It's going to come back to the family.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely really important, and I do think that just like bringing kids, grandkids, into the picture, that actually makes it easier to raise these topics and talk about this stuff, because you can always say like, hey, do you want to talk to my lawyer? Or if you have already like modeled this behavior and like understand why it's important, I think that maybe that does make it a little bit easier to talk about. I guess it's harder for me to say. I feel like I'm more commonly working with people on the other side of the scale of like where they want to bring this up with their parents who, are perhaps elderly, and it can be like a much more, I mean, I think it can be a much more sensitive topic. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there are definitely some challenges on both sides. So I think that when we have older people wanting to talk about to their to their, say, adult children about this, there could be some defensiveness on the adult children's side of the equation, where they feel like, okay, they don't want to be being told what to do, right? How to
Yeah.
be a good parent, what they need to do. There's always that tension when we have, just parents and children. That's like the story. I don't know. I think everybody has some kind of tension in terms of wanting to have your children be really independent, but also wanting to do what's best for them and making sure that they have great advice.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I guess, again, just saying that I feel like having like the grandchildren, type thing into the situation does sort of give like a reason to bring it up, and a sort of takes a little bit of the emotion out of it, of like telling me what to do. Whereas like without that in the equation, well then I mean, I can see how it'd be a more, more sensitive topic.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the pandemic has raised a lot of questions and concerns. And one of the concerns can be that if your child, your adult child, if they are in the hospital, making sure that, often the parent would be the person making decisions for them, or wanting to make sure that uh, there is somebody, that there is some kind of plan in place for who would make that decision, as well as financial decisions. If we have a adult child who is in the hospital, who pays their bills, who's going to sign things for legal documents, if there's waivers that need to be signed for the hospital or for health insurance or things like that. So those are really, I would say that every any adult of 18 or over really needs to have those basic documents of at least a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney, just to protect themselves.
Yeah, I actually that actually reminds me of something else, of like when sending your kids off to college, when they go away for college, is really making sure that there's like the healthcare proxy is set in place, because again, if something were to happen, then want to make sure you'll be like legally allowed to to step in and to make those decisions. And I mean, I think that that's a newer concept, maybe, that a lot of, like, I mean, my parents wouldn't have thought of that, um, for example. So I feel like maybe it's a little bit newer concept where maybe, and I have a teenager, so so it's just something to think about, that maybe 20 years ago people just weren't really doing that. Would you agree that that's the case?
Yeah, I think there is more awareness of this issue, and also I think some of the health privacy laws that maybe weren't in place when we were kind of coming of age make this a little bit different, because the healthcare providers can't release information
Right.
even to a parent
Good point.
if the child is 18. So so if you want to be able to have any input into that decision making or be able to advise, you really need to have the documentation in place.
I think that sometimes people are relieved if someone else brings it up, frankly, because a lot of people have been feeling like their own mortality in all this, or like know someone who got, really sick, or died, or has like long haul COVID or something. And so, I mean, everybody either knows someone or knows someone who knows someone. So, I mean, just being the person and be like, oh, hey, just want to make sure that, that you're taken care of, um, how can I help, is maybe at this moment in time can be can be received as more of like, will you be okay? Like, I'm worried about you, rather than stop telling me what to do, or, you're just trying to look for your inheritance or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's
So
interesting
maybe it's
because
a change. Yeah.
when I was talking about adult children feeling they want their parents telling them what to do, we have um, the opposite of that too, right? We have the flip side of that is,
Right.
I think, and I've seen this a lot in COVID, where older people are feeling they don't want their kids telling them what they can and can't do, because like
Yeah.
I think children are like really protective of their parents, and the parents are feeling like, I'm an adult myself. I can make my own decisions. So I think that can be, it's interesting that you kind of can go full circle.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that is definitely, my experience, or with my clients, kind of experience, is their parents are like, you know what? Like, some of them are like, the best case, or a good case, is if they're like, don't worry, we have everything taken care of. If there's a problem, here's our lawyer's name. If you need to contact him, here's his contact information, or hers. um, and that's like a good case scenario, where it's like, okay, you don't necessarily know all the details. Like, I would like to know more, personally. I mean, I do know more because I'm a financial planner, but the sort of worst case scenario is like, and this happens too, is where parents are like, you know what, it's none of your business, you're a kid, I'm the parent, and like, I don't want to talk about that. And so that can be really, really hard. And frankly, like, the kids, we're all going to die someday. And so you also, it's like a gift to your kids to make sure that everything um, is in order for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's your loved ones who are going to be trying to pick up the pieces, whether you're older or younger.
Yeah. And I've experienced
Um,
that myself. I mean, not to, I don't want to get emotional or anything, but, my dad died in 2015, and, we had his wishes in writing, and that, was a huge relief. And so I wouldn't have wanted to, be in that situation without having that. So there you go.
yeah, I think the people who are on the other end of it, that if they've gone through that and their loved one has planned very carefully and have been really thoughtful about it, there's so much gratitude and appreciation for that because you're already going through such a difficult time, and just to not have more challenges and more paperwork and things that it would be unnecessary and could have been prevented, it just makes it so much easier for those people.
Yeah. But I mean, adult kids can really help their parents get organized, and they should. I mean, because I mean, you know, there's estate planning, is kind of a getting organized thing, but just also financially. I mean, elderly people are really like the target of so many scams out there, and just having someone to kind of know where things are, have a list, close down accounts that aren't being used, sort of simplify and streamline things is, gonna, um, just gonna help the financial security for someone you care about.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and it is something I hear about. You just hear about it all the time of people being targeted for these kinds of scams, and certainly even in my own family, people have been targeted. Thankfully, not successfully, but I do. I'm kind of the belief that more sharing of information is better. Some people, to the extent that you're comfortable with it, some people, and it's totally, they're entitled to their own privacy and what they think is appropriate. But the more information that is shared between family members, um, just the easier it's going to be, and the more protection there will be for everyone involved.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the very least, so if your parents aren't comfortable in talking about their own particular finances or what exactly is in their documents, at least make sure that they have worked with an attorney and you have the contact information for that attorney. Make sure that you know where their original documents are, because that is something that often poses a big problem. We know that there was a will, but we don't know where it is, or what was done with it. Sometimes the lawyer has it, sometimes they don't. Make sure, even if the lawyer, you gave it to the lawyer a long time ago, is that lawyer still have it? Because that can be an
Yeah,
issue
that
that I've
attorney could
seen a
have
lot.
retired, by this point. I mean, I talked to a client. They're like, "Yeah, we should get our documents updated. We did it when our kids were born, but now we have grandchildren, so times have changed." And yes, you definitely should get that updated. Here's an attorney. Let's get this going.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely. And I think that sort of in terms of like what are the important documents, making sure that, at the very least, they have a will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney. I also generally recommend a living trust, just to avoid probate. Will definitely make things easier for loved ones. Um, but at the very minimum, you want a will, power of attorney, and a healthcare proxy. A lot of times I'll tell my clients that, like you said, modeling that behavior, and just I say blame me, like put it on me. I was talking to my estate planning lawyer, and she was asking, like, do
yeah.
my parents have these things in place to make sure that we know what we need to plan for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the modeling good behavior is kind of, you can use yourself and either on either side, the older person talking to their adult child, or the adult child talking to their parent of like, oh, hey, we're working with a financial advisor, and she laid out how long our savings will last after we retire. Have you done that? Like, and do you want to talk to somebody? It can just help to kind of get the conversation going in a way that is maybe um, not going to have like a create like a defensive response, which I think can sometimes happen as well. Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, you want it to be just, you want to make, and I think it is sincere, but you just want to make sure it's received as sincere of, hey, I care about you, and I want to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're, kind of dead on in terms of this is about caring. This is about kind of
Yeah.
making sure that people are taken care of and that their wishes are carried out. I want to encourage, the participants on the call, if they have any particular questions, to feel free to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A. We have, we're happy to take those questions if you have anything in particular or any topics that you'd like for us to address. One of the things that comes up a lot, Sarah, and when I think probably in your work and in mine, is long-term care planning, and I do want to address that because it's something it's so expensive, and it's something most of us at some point is going to need some form of long-term care. Can you kind of explain what long-term care means and how we can financially prepare for it at whatever age we're at?
Sure, sure. It's changed a lot in recent years, but just kind of big picture, what it is it's not like the same as health insurance, because it's not about, okay, I have surgery or I broke my leg. It's more about the um, care, like the activities of daily living is what they call it, the ADL. So, at a certain time, many of us in our lives need, help bathing, making food for yourself, maintaining your home, that there's the activities of daily living people, struggle with, like that late in life. Anyone with dementia, and there is also likely going to need, some sort of like long-term care mechanism. So long-term care is not covered. This type of care, um, that it could be in a facility, like a long-term care facility, or it could be, and for a lot of people, this is the ideal situation of like a part-time, a nurse slash care provider, not necessarily a registered nurse, who comes to your home, a few hours a day, or, it's not necessarily full-time care, and allows someone to like stay in their home for a longer time, but sort of like get help and make sure that their meals are taken care of, and that they're taking their medications, and they're doing all those things. Okay, so this type of care, this help with the activities of daily living, is not covered by your health insurance. It's not covered by Medicare, which is like some people think that it is. Or another example, one time people need this, is recovering after a surgery. So someone has like knee replacement surgery, or something like that. Like for that 30, 60, 90 days after a health event, the Medicare will cover for that short period of time, but longer term care, you need long-term care insurance, or you pay out of pocket. So the
Yeah,
type
so I
of
just want
insurance,
to clarify that
yeah,
because
mhm,
I think a lot of people say, well, I have Medicare. Isn't
right.
that, I have Medicare supplements. Isn't that going to cover me?
Yeah, it does not. It does not. It does for a period of time. And so it's, maybe depending on like the supplements, it might be like 60 or 90, but like I think the base case is like a 30-day period that, that would be covered. And so that's not enough. I mean, you know, I think the average person who's in a long-term care facility it's more like 2 years. So, 2 to 4 years of coverage. So Medicare doesn't cover it. So this is how people kind of like really drain their savings at the end of their life, paying for this type of expensive care, which can really be like, upwards of $10,000 a month, or more. So the type of insurance that does cover it is Medicaid, which is, like when you can't afford to pay with your own resources, there's Medicaid insurance, which, it comes into effect after you've depleted your other accounts, assets, etc. And so there's no shame in it, certainly, but I just not I think a lot of people don't necessarily like realize that this is something that wasn't ever going to be covered by Medicare.
Yeah, and
Um,
Medicaid is it. You might think, oh, I don't have too many assets, I don't have too much money in the bank or whatnot, but Medicaid is very difficult to qualify for. So there are pretty much, any income, any assets over, I think it's like 2,000. It's a very low amount, um, is going to disqualify you. So and if even if you have no kind of financial assets, but if you have a home, um, you might qualify for Medicaid, but that home is going to go towards when you pass away, then Medicaid, the government is going to have a lien against that home. So your home even is going to go and can go eventually towards those long-term care
right,
expenses.
right, and so right, exactly, and so I mean there's a fairness in that, but if you've promised your home to your kids or grandkids, or if you had a different idea in your mind, it's good to know that this is how the system works. Um, so long-term care insurance is
And just
something.
to kind of
Oh,
pipe
sure.
in there about it kind of the home, that's often an opportunity for planning. So we can kind of preserve certain assets by planning in advance, but it does have to be done in advance. And you can qualify for Medicaid and still protect your home and certain other assets for your kids, but we need to do that in advance.
And is it like 5 years in advance? Like, is that what typically what you have?
Yeah, it's right now. It's 5 years in advance for institutional care, meaning a facility, and then it's less for that. It's sort of in flux. They've been changing this. It was just like 3 or 6 months for home care planning, but now I think they're changing that over the next few years. It's going to go up to maybe like 3 years, I think, for in-home care planning for in-home care.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a question, just kind of going back to the original thing, like for an adult child to ask their parents is like, oh, hey, do you have long-term care insurance? Because if they do, great. Like keep paying those premiums, even if they go up, which they have in recent years, have gone up quite a bit. And in fact, I know you can set up with a long-term care policy, like you can have a like a designated person, like if you don't make your payment or it's bounced or something, that someone else would be notified to make that payment so your policy doesn't lapse. Because it's just if you have a long-term care policy and it lapses, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to get it again at an older age or after you've already had some sort of medical issue. Um, so it's changed a lot. Like the sort of standard long-term care policies are, like you say, that and just the regulations are in flux. Like I think that insurance industry is in flux. Like they've gotten more choosy about who they choose to insure, and also the policies have gotten more expensive. Um, and that's different than life insurance. Like life insurance, usually you can still get it even if you have medical issues. It's just like going to be a lot more expensive. A lot of times with long-term care, you can't even get it.
So what do you recommend to your clients about long-term care insurance? I think it's such a confusing and complicated issue. What generally, is there any kind of rules of
I
thumb
mean,
of
I
should you
think
get
that,
it, should
yeah,
you
the rules of
not
thumb,
get
like
it?
sort of in CFP land, certified financial planner, have been to kind of get it between the age of 50 and 60. Like you don't want to get it too young because then you're paying premiums for, too many years. But, between 50 and 60 is sort of like they're usually like the right time, to get it. But you could still be paying premiums for many, many years. And I'm talking about, a few $1,000s a year, like $3,000, $4,000 a year, or more of premiums. There are other policies that I think are becoming are more popular now, where it's like a hybrid life insurance and long-term care policy. And so you put a chunk of money in there. If you need it for long-term care, it's used for that. If you don't use it for long-term care, well, then that same chunk of money is like a death benefit for your beneficiary on the life insurance. All that being said, I actually do want to say is that I don't sell life insurance. Well, we don't sell it, but it's, I do have like insight or like view on some of these policies because, it's life insurance is, or any kind of insurance is like an important part of, someone's financial plan. So it's just a good way to cover risk. Oh, and also if you or your parents are planning to move into like a retirement community, a lot of times those retirement communities also have kind of like an assisted living option, for their people as they need it. So in that case, like that's kind of your long-term care plan, is in this like assisted living type community. So you might not need it if that's your plan, but that, so that could be part of the package as well.
Is there any amount at which you can plan on self-funding your care that wouldn't necessarily you have sufficient funds to pay for this, then you wouldn't have to worry about Medicaid, you wouldn't have to worry about long-term care insurance. Is that
I
sort of
mean,
a realistic possibility for
the sort of
someone?
rule of thumb, I think that, I've heard, the financial planners use is if you have a net worth of 5 million or more, that, basically
Wow.
you're going to be planning to self-fund, long-term care for your family. But
So
I mean,
$5 million, that sounds like a lot of money
yeah,
for
yeah,
most people. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it is. And, so there could be exceptions to that, obviously, but we're talking about like 2 years in a long-term care facility, where you could be looking at $400,000. I mean, it's a lot of money that, and that might be like your whole balance in your IRA or what have you for some people. So, looking at that long-term care insurance possibility, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are such important issues, and I think you're being really helpful in terms of answering these questions. I think one of the things that if you do get questions, or you do want to talk to your loved ones about any of these issues, whether it's long-term care, whether it's estate planning, one of the best ways I think to do it, and like we were talking about before, saying, I've had this conversation, but also I think it's great to be able to refer them to somebody who can help them and not just say you really need to get this done, because I think where a lot of people, whether you're younger or older, where they feel where there's resistance and or they just feel challenged, is where they just don't really know where to turn to, or who they can ask for help. So I think if you have somebody who you've used or and you can recommend, that's a great way to provide an additional, just make it a lot easier for them to reach out and get the kind of help that they need.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so, I mean, again, I was, saying about modeling behaviors like, oh, I'm working with someone. Would you like her name? Or, um, do you know
Or even
who
if
like Uncle
they,
Joe used,
maybe, yeah, or even if, they might not be comfortable with the person, their parents or their kids or whoever is using, then even that financial advisor or attorney or whoever can usually give another recommendation. So to say, okay, if your kids don't want to use the same advisor as you, here's the name of somebody else who I would recommend for them to
and
consider.
I would say financial planners, at least, that do make those types of referrals all the time and are totally comfortable doing that. And if they don't know someone who sounds like a good fit for this person who maybe lives in a different state or whatnot, I mean, they tend to belong to sort of professional organizations where people share referrals like that all the time. Like, oh, hey, my client needs a referral for her parents who have a city pension in Chicago, do you know anyone who is familiar with that plan? And you get lots of recommendations right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for estate planning attorneys as well.
Yeah.
Well, this has been delightful and informative. I just want to, before we wrap up, just check again and see if there's any questions, if anyone has that they want to pipe in about. Okay, so I do see a question, and this is about trusts and whether to leave assets to a trust for children, whether that's kind of from the child's perspective or the parents. So a lot of times, clients think that, well, trusts are really, you don't want to leave money in trusts unless there's, your Bill Gates or on the other side of things, that you have a child who has a lot of issues with money. So maybe they're not responsible. They have some kind of alcohol or substance issue, and to protect the money. So what I would say to this is that generally leaving money to trust is a great idea, always in my opinion, even if the child is completely trustworthy. The reason I say this is because the money that goes into trust is going to be protected for against any claims. So if the child ends up getting married, divorced, the money wouldn't be subject to any claims in divorce, or if they got sued for any reason, the money would be protected. So it provides a level of protection for your child. So it's not really to control the money, what happens to the money or how it's used. It's to benefit the child and to protect the money for the child. And you can still have the child have a lot of control, assuming they're an adult child, have a lot of control over what happens with that money and how it's used. So there is a tremendous amount of flexibility. So generally, on the whole, I would say, especially as the dollars are higher in terms of the inheritance amount, it's a great idea to leave money for in trust to protect the assets, and also it can be beneficial for tax purposes as well, depending on your child's tax situation.
Is there an amount that like is a rule of thumb of like when like, okay, let's start talking trusts?
Yeah, so if your children are young, definitely we need a trust because they can't manage the money for themselves. So if you have like a 10-year-old who inherits any amount of money, that money is going to be overseen by the court until the child is 18. So you want to just avoid that in any situation, regardless of how much money is involved, because it just ends up being extremely burdensome and costly, really, in terms of the legal fees to have it be subject to that kind of court administration. So if you have children who are under the age of 18, I would say in all cases, you definitely want to leave the money to a trust instead of directly to the children. And then if the children, even, these days, like, we kind of have an extended adolescence, I guess we think of it, so to speak. Children are not really quite, maybe ready to make big financial decisions, even when they're 18, 19, 20. So I would say even up to, maybe 25, you don't want to be leaving them a chunk of money just to be able to do whatever they want for themselves. And then in terms of after that, if it's more than, I would say, a couple $100,000, you want to maybe think about putting it into
Mhm.
a trust.
Okay, that's a good answer. Thanks.
Yeah, anything definitely over 500,000, I would say definitely you want to put that into a trust.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. So I think we're, anything else, Sarah, that you want to add before we wrap up?
Just good luck, trying to start those conversations and, let the people uh, let them know that let them know that you care, and that asking questions is a way to show you care.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. You can reach either Sarah or I. There'll be, I think that it's in the announcement for the webinar in terms of our contact information, but we'll also get a follow-up email with the replay link and our contact information to reach out if we can be helpful.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for joining us, Sarah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care. Happy holidays, everyone.